Welcome to the divisional round Sunday instant reaction show for RotoWire. Jim Coventry and Anthony Cervino. A wild day of football. After a pretty bad beginning of the postseason, we finally got the day of football we needed. Let's just get right to the game that just ended. Ravens Bills. This game started out, the Bills were a 1.5-point favorite. It quickly got bet to Baltimore -1.5. It never moved from there. The Bills, we'll start with the Bills. The Bills are going on to the AFC Championship. The Bills did what they needed to do. They played smart football. They had a lead for most of the game. They played as if they had a lead. Now, there were a lot of punts in the second half, and a few things went their way. To me, congratulate them. They won. This was not a dominant effort. The first couple drives they had were great. I was not impressed otherwise. Anthony?
No. When you look at most football games and you have a team like the Buffalo Bills and you see the box score, I think we're at 3 turnovers. Usually they're blowing that game open, especially those 2 early ones in the first half. This game literally came down to last play. Buffalo didn't play a good game of football. 127 yards passing for Josh Allen. James Cook, 17 for 67. He was about a yard below his season average of 4.9-ish. He was at 3.9. I don't want to use the word luck because I don't think the Bills were lucky.
No,
they did enough to win, but they almost lost this game. I don't know if they played to win. I think they more or less played not to lose for a lot of this football game. Does that make sense?
It does, because maybe they could have done more, but they played like they had a lead, and that's dangerous. We've seen it all the time in the halftime, 21-10, and then the Bills get stopped twice by the Ravens, and the Ravens start making this a game very quickly. So, yeah, ending the third quarter, what are we looking at? 21-19 because they missed a 2-point conversion. Anthony, I quickly want to talk about that before. We'll get to the nuts and bolts back to the Bills. But that first 2-point conversion, I get it. They wanted to tie the game. But when I thought about it, I'd probably kick the one there. Yeah. Because had Buffalo gone down the field, scored a touchdown, they would have been now 9 if they missed that 2-point conversion. If you kick the one, usually you're going to be down 8. So you still have to come back and score. And I think ultimately that could have bit them at the end, because if Tucker kicks the extra point the first time, that last touchdown, we don't need that Mark Andrews play. Right. We're kicking an extra point, and this thing's in overtime. So I don't know what the analytics say, and I don't care what the analytics say. And I understand it was a 2-point game. And it's like, oh, yeah, well, definitely let's tie it. But Buffalo could have scored a touchdown, and I think they played it dangerous, and it ended up hurting them. Anything on that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And we're in an analytics-driven world, an analytics-driven sport. But I also think, you have to kind of wind it back to old school football. These close games, I don't know if I'm messing around with the 2-point conversions until like that last one, you absolutely had to have it. That first one, you didn't absolutely have to have it because, like you said, you kick that extra point. Justin Tucker makes it. Now, on that final drive, we're not going for a 2-point conversion. You're kicking that extra point. We're going into overtime. So, I think analytics should be, they're warranted, but they're also situational. In a game like this with these two types of teams, you got to take the points when they're there.
Now, in terms of the turnovers that Buffalo forced, the Lamar Jackson one, sloppy in the pocket, cold weather, didn't handle the ball well. It was more Jackson than the defender that got rid of it. The interception was a bad throw by Jackson, but I will give credit to that Mark Andrews fumble, the forced fumble. That was one heck of a strip. It was a punch for it. It worked. And that's on Andrews, though, because Andrews had the ball down here.
Yes.
First rule, high and tight. We all know that.
What Andrews was doing, he was going to make a play because I feel like he whipped the ball up. If you go back and watch, he was going to make a play and kind of like to evade a defender, and then they got the strip.
Oh, it was brutal. But to the Bills, so the Bills legitimately forced one of those turnovers. The other two, it was good fortune. And you don't blame them. You don't throw any shade in the Bills. Hey, if good fortune's thrown in your lap, you play with it. You take advantage of it. And that's what the Bills did. Josh Allen, 10 rushes, 20 yards, got a couple touchdowns. Really didn't unleash him as a runner here. That kind of surprised me. The receiving, Shakir goes 6 for 67. The next leading receiver is Cook, 3 for 15, like 127 passing yards. They ended up with 273 scrimmage yards in the entire game. The running game did okay. Ty Johnson, I don't understand how he does it. I think teams play pass when he's in, actually. I think that's what happens. Teams play pass, and then because all of a sudden he looks like Superman whenever he touches the ball, but we know he's not Superman because he's been cycling through teams. So it's really that. The little guy comes in, and like for Justice Hill, it's the same deal. Justice Hill comes in for the Ravens. Teams thinking pass. They're not really thinking serious about the run. Ray Davis looked good on his 4 carries. We love Ray Davis. So, but that said, anything else on the Bills in this performance? I think it is not a lot to talk about on their side. I don't think.
No, I will say this: that first touchdown by Ray Davis, normally that's going to Cook. I like the fact that I think maybe the Bills saw that, hey, Ray Davis is more of our downhill runner, and that's who should be getting these handoffs.
We'll go a little longer on this. James Cook in this game, and 17 for 67 is fine, but I didn't like him in this matchup. And I said I said 70 yards max on XM Day, 70 max. I go 50 to 70. He'll be in that range. He's not getting 100 yards in this game because when he was getting those 100-yard games, Buffalo has a heavy offensive front. They're not dominant, they're heavy. And when they play a small front or a bad run defense, like New England they played, who was horrible against the run. Last week, Denver, tiny up front. They're good pass rushers, but they're not good there. They played San Francisco in the small. They had in the snow. They had a bad run defense there. There were like 4 games where we had big 100-yard games, but they all had a story to them. That offensive line could easily pummel them, and Cook did great. This is when Cook plays a good defense, this is more of the likelihood of what we're seeing. And he was fine. He was fine. He wasn't bad in any way. He was fine. He's just not that 120-yard guy that people were thinking they had. Yeah. Anything else?
No. I just wanted to bring up, the usage of Ray Davis, and I think that was the right call.
Randy brings up a point, and to me, I don't get the Amari Cooper thing. They trade for him, and Khalil Shakir is their slot guy, and he's literally their number 1. He's a good player. We like him. You and I are in on him, but he is not a difference maker in any way. He's a good player, but you bring in Cooper, and I don't know if he couldn't learn the offense. I don't know if they're just a spread the wealth, because they got rid of Stephon Diggs because Diggs always wanted the ball, and they were like, we're going to do the spread the wealth thing. And I think that's worked fine for them. Obviously 13-4, and they're going to the AFC Championship. Worked fine for them, but I think there'll be a day, and maybe today was a day. They got, if they don't get those 3 turnovers, they don't have the receivers to win. They got Mac Hollins out there playing meaningful snaps often. And when we preview this game for next week, we might talk about that a bit, but that's probably enough for the Bills, unless you had anything else.
No, we can move on.
All right, Baltimore. In the first half, we were ready to say, it's playoff Lamar. We were talking off script on this one offline, and is it playoff Lamar or is it just luck? The bad interception, the fumble in the pocket, that one really wasn't an error. It was probably cold football, lost his concentration, but that could be part of it. But then the rest of the way, Lamar Jackson acquitted himself fine. So I don't think at this point we could say it was playoff Lamar laying an egg. I think with the second half he had, Andrews catches that ball, completely different story. This game goes to overtime. We got a different game. What were your thoughts on Lamar Jackson in this game?
Exactly what you said. I thought we were getting playoff Lamar early, because a meltdown's a meltdown. Whether it's bad luck, whether it's this or that, it's still going to be connected with him. But how this team bounced back, playing from behind, the Ravens in the second half came out, and they looked like they were going to win this football game. Derrick Henry was picking up chunk plays. Lamar Jackson was getting comfortable throwing the football. And then Mark Andrews happened. And Mark Andrews happened to them twice. So, and I do think national media and just overall fans and the NFL universe in general, they're going to call it playoff Lamar because of the stat sheet and those 2 giveaways. But this loss is on Mark Andrews.
100% on Mark Andrews. The fumble, the 2-point conversion, inexcusable. In that magnitude, the fourth quarter, big plays, big times in the game. Andrews is a great player. Again, Andrews is a player we both think the world of.
Yeah.
but he didn't get it done here, and they needed him. No Zay Flowers. Bateman did come back, but when Bateman sat out, Tylan Wallace, nice 27-yard catch. That play was big. Lamar Jackson, that was big boy football. Buying time, looking, decides not to run, but then he finds Wallace down the seam for 27 yards. That was a great play by Lamar Jackson. It was one that set up that last score. But I still think in the first half, I think the Ravens, they saw immediately the way the Bills were lining up defensively. This is a nickel-based team. They were coming in, putting more bodies. It was inexcusable for the Ravens to not come in and load up with their heavy personnel, 2 tight ends and Ricard, because they still would have bludgeoned them. Instead, they didn't do that, and Henry got off to a slow start, and that was very, very avoidable. I was not happy with that because they could have out-physicaled that Buffalo team. I don't care if you put extra guy in the box. Pittsburgh couldn't stop them. If Pittsburgh can't stop them on the run, Buffalo sure as heck can't stop them because they don't have nearly the run defense chops. And again, you go in with lighter personnel, and then of course Buffalo shooting gaps, and it works.
I'm glad you brought that up because I did want to ask: do you feel like Baltimore got away from their identity in this game, especially in the first half? Henry, again, close game, only 16 carries. Justice Hill, who went, I think, 6 for 60 and a touchdown as a receiver in that first game. He only caught his only 2 balls and his only 2 targets on that last drive. I feel like, and maybe it is because of the defense that Buffalo showed them, but I'm with you. I did not like it. And these guys are really good players, Matt Milano and Rapp and Teron Johnson. But like, people are talking about these guys like they're the Steelers of the 70s.
Yeah, no, and it's not that. And the Justice Hill thing, in the first game, both Terrell Bernard, the middle linebacker, and Milano, who hasn't played at his normal level due to the injury he came back from, they were both out in that first game, and the Ravens made it a point to pepper the backup linebackers with oh my gosh, the Justice Hill. So so in this game, the coverage was better and the opportunities weren't there. Like I said, 1 catch. But again, Hill in that change of pace role, 6 for 50, just like Ty Johnson on the Bills.
Yeah.
Teams aren't playing for them. They hit a quick hitter, and all of a sudden you got big yardage. So, that worked out really well. In terms of the receivers, and I had said this in the first playoff game, and I said before this one, Zay Flowers out. That's all right. Isaiah Likely just steps into a heavier role, and Likely ends up leading the team. 4 for 73 and a touchdown, 5 targets. Now, Andrews had 7 targets, led the targets, but the production was led by Likely and Bateman. Andrews was productive as well, besides that and that. I'll say too, the fumble and the drop. So not much going on there. But again, just in my mind, inexcusable that Derrick Henry was not in heavy personnel sets early. I think that really could have set a tone. But if Lamar doesn't throw that bad interception, that fumble, we would be having a completely different discussion because those mistakes, they recovered from 3 mistakes and they still almost pushed it to overtime. So this Ravens team, this is going to be a long off season because this was very, very avoidable, Anthony.
Yeah, absolutely. Going into the offseason, to me, it's like, do they, and I have this question about a lot of teams who were bounced this weekend. Is this a team that really needs to look at himself in a mirror? Like, I get what they want to do and I get who they are, but in these crucial situations, do they, like is Zay Flowers good enough to move the needle? Or do they need to go get a big play wide receiver? Even if it's just somebody like Alec Pierce who can go up there and give you those 3 potential big plays a game. I'm not saying go and get a guy like Malik Neighbors. You just need a more of a, like you have Bateman, but when Zay is out, you move. What else do you have in terms of depth?
Well, I think they're hoping that a year 2 Tylan Wallace steps into that role.
Yeah.
He didn't play much as a rookie. We don't know. We don't know what his camp was like. We don't know what his practices were like, but they did get him on the field in the playoffs and he did make that big catch. But that would be your answer to that if they get him working, that'd be fine. Oh, and one more in that first drive, they had Derrick Henry in the flat for what would have been a very good gainer. And then Lamar underthrew him a little bit. Yeah. And Derrick Henry, when you got to put on the numbers for him, that was a rough throw, but again, that's nitpicking there. So that said, like you said, Ravens in the offseason, maybe a little bit of tweaking. They lost a lot of games this year. They lost 5 games. A few of those games were just like games they should have won. The Raiders game, just they had some really, really bad losses. And so, you know what? And those losses, hey, they were one game behind the Bills in the standings. I don't know how the tiebreakers would have shook out, but them bonking in bad games, that could have been the difference in them playing this game at home and on the road. And if we're playing this game in Baltimore, we may have a completely different story. And so, maybe on them for those soft losses that you can't afford in this league. So, all right, we're going to go to our next game, and then we'll come back and we'll preview the conference championship games quickly before that. Let's go to the Eagles and Rams. And this was a thrilling game, Anthony. The snow didn't start right away. It took a little bit of a slow start to get there. And first quarter, we had 13-7 Philly. And, of course, Jalen Hurts pops off the 44-yard touchdown run. Saquon gets a 62-yard run. And the Rams are moving the ball. So the first quarter of action was outstanding before. So what were your thoughts before the snow hit and this game was 13-7?
I came into this game all week thinking that the Rams had a chance. I like their defense. I get you can only play who you play, but down the stretch, this is one of the better defenses. They were young. They got after it. And what I said, and I think on a show last night and throughout the week, if you could slow down Saquon Barkley and try to put the ball in Jalen Hurts' hands, especially in the bad weather, I think you can keep this game in close and keep yourself in position to win. Now, obviously, you had Jalen Hurts got a little bit banged up, Saquon got a little bit banged up, but the Rams are absolutely in this, and a lot of it is because of their pass rush.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Eagles. I think that offensive line played badly today. It was not this is a small Rams front. This is one that the Eagles should have been able to physically dominate that pass rush. They should have been able to hold them off with no issue at all. In my mind, the Rams came out aggressive. I don't know what the Eagles line was thinking. They were not anything close to the line we've seen. For that team to give up 7 sacks, that doesn't happen. And they played some good pass rushes over the air. The Rams, again, they are small up front. That should not have been an issue, but clearly it was. Here's my thing, Anthony. I believe that A.J. Brown is significantly less than 100%. Last week, he got 1 pass for 10 yards on 3 targets. This week, 2 catches for 14 on 7. Almost had a touchdown. That would have been a big play. But the fact that A.J. Brown is not being featured in the offense, I know they want to run the ball, but Brown is their alpha. Brown has not done anything in 2 weeks, and the matchup was golden against the Rams. The first time he had 7 targets, got like 6 for 109 maybe in a touchdown. They could not get near him. Well, they covered him pretty well. I don't think he can run, Anthony.
Yeah, something's off here with A.J. Brown, and I know you keep going to the name. Maybe what else could it be? There is no other logical reason. This is a premier wide receiver who still has a few really nice years left. He shouldn't. Some of those, it's like he's been erased from quite a few games this year. Not just a few down the stretch. There was a few early on where it's like, where is A.J. Brown?
And in some of those games, it was very simply that Jalen Hurts was throwing 20 passes. He only threw 22. No, he threw less. He threw 20 in this game. So there were games, if you have 20 pass attempts, you're right. Where's the pie? And also, those aren't all downfield shots. So there were games they just didn't need to do anything because their offensive line and their running game was kicking tail, and they were just being some safe passes. So you're right. Brown had a low stat line, I think, because they didn't need to get aggressive. And then everybody blamed Jalen Hurts, saying, well, he's the problem. And I know he has issues. I know when you get him out of the pocket, he's in trouble. As a passer, doesn't do well there. I know there are a lot of things you do to confuse him. But realistically, in that Pittsburgh game, week 15, when they had all the public criticism from A.J. Brown and others, when he came out, he tore that Pittsburgh defense up. They're not great against the pass, but he had, Brown over 100 yards and a touchdown, Devontae Smith over 100 yards and a touchdown. So I think that we're really being hard on Jalen Hurts. And again, we know he has weaknesses, but I just think that this is a run-based team, Anthony.
Yeah, and Philly is doing an absolutely great job running the football and playing defense and winning football games this way. But I just feel like, maybe it's next week against Washington. Or if they advance, maybe it's going to be in a Super Bowl. A.J. Brown's going to have to make plays, and Jalen Hurts is going to have to put the ball there. So they're going to need to figure this out in the next 2 weeks.
Based on what I saw from the Eagles today, I have to say I'm giving the AFC a 95% shot of winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, This Eagles team right now, they do a lot of things well, but they don't do a lot of things well. And I know Washington, we'll talk about them later. They're in the discussion as well. But I think right now, Bills or Chiefs, it's going to be a coronation. Right? And I mean, the game could be close. It could be somewhat close. But I don't, right now, today, I don't see the Eagles or the Commanders having a ghost of a chance against either of those teams. We'll talk about the conference championship later, so I guess we can table that unless you want to add something to that.
No, I'm absolutely in agreement. Again, if it's Kansas City, I do think it's going to be a Kansas City three-peat. If it's Buffalo, I mean, again, we just talked about it earlier. It's not like Buffalo just blew the doors open or blew the doors off of Baltimore. They had those 3 turnovers. I almost feel like Philadelphia Buffalo would be pretty evenly matched.
I could see.
And it's a game I would take the under in.
Interesting. When we get there, we'll have to see what that number is. Randy points out he's going to get the A.J. Brown book he's been reading on the sidelines. You know what, Anthony? Last week, people were asking the questions about A.J. Brown, why he was reading the book. And I said, the question that people weren't asking, and they totally missed this. If you're reading a book on the sideline, that means you brought it with you. So you knew you were going to read it, and it probably wasn't the first time you brought it. And then people ask me, well, why do you think he was reading? I said, real simple. He probably wanted to get centered. And it's funny, during the game today, they said he was trying to get centered. I understand how that works. And like you said, the physical part of the game, great. But I know often, and I'm decades away from my baseball playing days, but I know the mental part of the game was always the difficult part. And we talk about centering now, and I wish I knew more about it then, because that would have been a thing. So he's a smart young man. But yeah, they weren't asked the question, why did you bring the book, or how long you've been bringing it? They just said, oh, you were reading. They thought it was like a one-off, and it wasn't. But that book was
just week 6.
Right. Because that was the first thing. It clearly wasn't the first time. But of course, national media catches something like, oh my gosh, look at this. That book is a bestseller on Amazon this week. Apparently the book's like 5 years old. So I thought that was pretty cool. Good story there. Hey, we can't move off the Eagles until we spend a little time on Saquon Barkley. Oh my goodness. What a beast. 262 plus touchdown runs. One was 78, goes for 205 and 2 touchdowns. Catch second leading receiver, 4 catches, 27 yards. The Rams tried to have an answer from early. They tried, but you know what? You can only do so much. Unlike Derrick Henry, who had 16 carries, Saquon had 26. Saquon.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley, and I'm trying to pull up the numbers for. I think he's had over 500 total yards of offense, a couple of touchdowns in 2 games against the Rams.
Yep.
And Saquon broke this game open in the second half, and really, again, the Rams, they had a shot, but Saquon is the one who put this game out of reach. He's a home run hitter. You even saw it last week in a wild card weekend. He hit that home run ball, and he said, I'm just going to sit on it and save it for next week. I mean, he's an incredible player. And, I said it on a show with you when he signed with Philly. When you asked, what is the ceiling for Saquon Barkley? I said he could have a CMC-like impact. Some people thought I was crazy. You can make the case that he's having a superior impact than what CMC has done with the 49ers. I think it's superior.
People are talking, you hear the TV copy. Josh Allen is the best player on the planet. No, he's a quarterback playing the most important position in professional sports, and Patrick Mahomes is the best. Don't care about what he did this year. Don't care. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson should somewhere fight for second, but that's a quarterback. I'm not going to say for a minute as a football player that Saquon Barkley is no less better than Josh Allen. I'm not going to say Derrick Henry is no less better. They're different positions. They're different impacts. I understand it. The quarterback is always more valuable. But if you're going to tell me that Josh Allen's a better player than Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry, I'm not buying that. People are going to say I'm crazy because everybody says the quarterback has to be. But what are your thoughts?
I mean, the quarterback's always going to get the accolades if you win, if you lose, but there are other positions. And I feel like we live in an era where running back's a little bit downgraded. If you go back years, running backs are usually having big games in the Super Bowl. Even guys like Damian Williams with Kansas City, Leonard Fournette with the Brady Buccaneers. Running backs are, in my opinion, they might be the most important position on a football field because of how often they touch the ball, how they're involved in every play in pass protection and blocking or touching the football. So it might be devalued to the consensus, but I think it might be the most important position on the field next to quarterback.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I'll put
That's
center in
my
it.
opinion.
And nobody talks about centers, but of course, we're not going to talk about centers on the show. So you don't have to worry. You can stay tuned. Don't change the channel. We will not talk about centers. And I won't even talk about Patrick Ricard today. I said his name, and that's enough. All right, Rams side of the ball. Look, they were down significantly on the 28. They were down 2 scores. It was 28-13, I think it was, something like that. I don't remember exactly where they were down 2 scores with about 3 minutes left. They come down right down the field, and they score a touchdown. Get the ball back. Jalen Hurts takes that sack, loses 9 yards, I believe. That was a rough sack. I don't know why they decided to go play action rollout on that. Just feed the ball to Barkley, let him see if he can move the chains. Again, they get behind the chains. The Rams get the ball back, and they are driving down the field, and they almost pull the game off. It's down, I believe, the 13-yard line, and it's a 3rd and 2, and the Eagles come up with a sack. Put Stafford behind. They got to rush a 4th down pass, and it's the ball game. But the Rams almost stole this game, Anthony.
Yeah, and is there a case to be made that if weather was not involved, maybe the Rams win this game? Because obviously that heavy snow did impact a few of those Matt Stafford throws, and I think in a different climate, we're having a different conversation right here. But again, you got to play the games where and when you have to play them.
And that's the story of the game. I kind of buried the lead there. We're talking about the Eagles, we're about Saquon Barkley, but buried the lead. It's the snow. The snow was everything. And because the Rams were unable to earn a higher seed than the Eagles, that's what happens. You end up in a climate, in an East Coast climate in January where snow is a real possibility, cold is a real possibility, and the Rams end up on the short end of that. And what happens? Matthew Stafford loses a fumble on a strip, which wasn't like a heavy pressure one, but again, ball is hard, ball is slippery. Kyron Williams loses a softer fumble, and he fumbled in that first matchup. But again, these were weather-related turnovers, in my opinion, and those turned into 2 field goals. Now, the Eagles couldn't capitalize much, but 2 field goals ends up being the margin of victory in the game, though. Yeah. And so, and one of those, the Rams are moving the ball. So it was potential points off the board. And then it was points for, actually, both of them were in decent field position now that I think about it. So those were weather related, but they were the reason the Rams couldn't finish the deal, Anthony.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, Eagles 14-3, Rams 10-7, but it's just a play here, a play there is a difference. And we saw it in that first game today, or the last game, the Buffalo Baltimore game. A play here, a play there is the difference of whether you're playing to go to the Super Bowl or going home.
Exactly.
A couple of, the weather, the way the ball bounces, a flag.
100%. Michael, I see you got a question. We will get to your question. We're going to preview those games, so we definitely will get you covered on that. Puka Nacua gets 14 targets, catches 6 for 97. One of those was a long pass on the last, a beautiful catch, as he frequently makes on the sidelines. But realistically, Puka was 6 for 14 is not an efficient game. Higbee, it was his best 3-game stretch he's had since early 2022. And his ACL came after the 2023 season. So it wasn't like he missed that season. It's almost 2 full years of active playing that it was like Higbee's best stretch. It's like weeks 2 through 4 in 2022. He had a stretch of 3 games with that many yards. I don't understand it. Coming off an ACL, he's over 30. Honestly, he was good for a year or 2, but I really didn't see him as much. But here he comes again, 754 and a touchdown on 10 targets. He was on his way to a monster game last week before getting knocked out very early in the game. He already had 5 for 50 in that one. Season's over for him, but anything on Demarcus Robinson, 3 for 74, Higbee, 7 for 54, or even Kupp showed up with a 5 for 61. A long 30-yard catch really made that day.
Yeah, it was a good day passing for the Rams, but it was also a day where they absolutely had to pass the ball to try to win and stay in this football game. I think this was because going into these games, it was defense. The offense wasn't really clicking. Stafford didn't have to do much. It was just dominant defense. So, yeah, I kind of expected a little bit of an uptick in production, but I don't know. I don't know what to expect from this Rams team moving forward going into next season. are we going to get Higbee back? Because I think Higbee could be a significant part of this offense. I also think if Higbee played a full season with how they use the tight ends in this offense, like, I know in fantasy we were drafting Parkinson like he was going to be a thing, and he was getting some opportunities, didn't really come through. Maybe if Higbee was healthy all year, maybe the Rams are in a better position.
It's interesting because Higbee's been with the team forever. He's been with Sean McVay forever. And he's had, I think, a 670 was his biggest season. So he's been there all this time. It's not like he's been this great player. He's done a little bit. And it was weird how they're going to other guys. And I don't know if it's because nobody gets going to guard Colby Parkinson. And really, nobody's going to tend to him. There's all right, run wherever. If you catch the ball, great. But Higbee did have a strong finish, like you said. Now, here's the deal. I'm going to check Cooper Kupp's contract because I'd like to know if he's going to be. So he signed a 3-year deal in 2022. So that's got to be the end of the deal. So my guess is he's done. There can't be any way they're bringing him back, right?
I wouldn't. And I think they have to go and replace him. One of my biggest concerns coming into this game today was who's going to step up, because if the Eagles are going to take away Puka Nacua, and they did, despite what the stat line says, they took out Puka Nacua, and yeah, other guys had good statistical days, but nobody really stepped up and took this game over, and they needed that.
I think Jordan Whittington will probably be attempted to go in. He won't be Cooper Kupp what he was, but I think he will take over that secondary role in the offense. He had flashes. He played a little bit. We'll see how that works out. But let's get to the next point of the show. We're going to take an early look. We're not even into the research phase of this yet, but we'll take an early look. We'll start with Commanders at Eagles. So these teams played twice. So they played back in week 11. It was a 26-18 game on a Thursday night. It wasn't that close. There was a touchdown to 2-point conversion very, very late in the game. So this thing was 26-10. It was a blowout. And then we got, and you and I kind of went back and forth on this a little bit. And on the other show, that game, the second game, the Commanders did win 36-33. They did outscore the Eagles 22-6 in the fourth quarter. But when this game started, it was 21-7 Eagles in the first quarter. They were going to boat race them. This game was going to be like 42-10. And Jalen Hurts got injured. And once he got hurt, Kenny Pickett came in. The defense said, Kenny Pickett's in. They just put everybody up front. And all of a sudden, the Eagles couldn't do anything on offense. They basically were crippled. They had 12 points the last 3 quarters. So they were crippled. And then whatever happened, the momentum got way out of whack. And after they were contained this offense, they just could not cover. They could not tackle. People were running wide open all over the field. It was just like the Jalen Hurts injury had this ripple effect. Now, again, they're 1-1 in the season. The Commanders did win that game at home. But like I said, with Jalen Hurts, it was a different game. Now, Quinyon Mitchell, he got injured in this game, and I don't know. It seemed like it could be significant. But on the other hand, the Commanders lose their right guard, Samuel Cosme, who has been an outstanding blocker this year. And that's going to be a Jalen Carter invitation to whoever the backup is there. So what are your initial thoughts on this Commanders at Eagles game?
I'm excited for it. I don't want to get caught up, because sometimes I get caught up in the emotion of one thing or another. And we did go back and forth on that last, because the Commanders, they won the game and the way they won it and how they won it. And, okay, Jalen Hurts didn't play. I think he only threw 4 passes in that game. And I don't want to get caught up in, the Commanders, they're going to have all this emotion behind them. They know they can beat the Eagles. Do they? Because they didn't play well when Jalen Hurts was in the football game in that first game. So I need to make sure I don't get caught up in the emotion of the Commanders. And I really dig deep here and look at these two teams. Well, who is the better football team? Who has the better defense? Because before we have to really dig in, I think it's Philadelphia. And I do worry about, in a situation, if Jalen Hurts has to throw, is he healthy coming off this game? Because it looked like he had that little bit of a knee issue.
Yep.
What's going on with Saquon Barkley's hand? I mean, there's a lot to look into here, but I think pound for pound, Philadelphia has a significant edge at home in this matchup. Is there emotion? Of course, the Commanders are going to be emotional. But guess what? So are the Lions. And look where that got them.
Oh, that
I remember
stings.
you
Randy's
said
in, hold
something.
on, hold on. Randy's in the house, and Randy's a big Lions fan. I'll put your name
Oh,
up there, Randy. So no, I had to tease you, Randy, on that one. But you're right, Anthony. You're right, Anthony. Nobody's as emotional as Detroit. Keep going.
I was going to say, like, like you threw me off, but like the at
You're
some
about the
point,
Commanders coming in emotional. You said the Eagles. You said the Lions were too, and look where
yeah,
that
the
got them.
Lions
You
were
said,
too. Look where that got them.
yeah.
So when you have the best team in the NFC, arguably in the Eagles, and an emotional team coming in, I have to stop siding with that emotion because I've done that way too much this postseason. Whether it was Tampa Bay, whether it was the Rams, and I think at least right now I'm going to side with Philly here because they do have the better football team.
So when I do my previews, and this isn't the way of me bailing out. When I do my previews for these games, I say if these teams play 10 times in this time in the playoffs in this thing in this stadium, how many times are you going to win? I would say this will answer Michael's question about the percentage. I think if they play 10 times, I think the Eagles win 7 and the Commanders win 3. That's what I think. And that's a significant edge, but I don't think it's like 9-1 or 8-2. I think it's 7-3. Where do you stand on that, Anthony?
That's about right. 7-3.
And here's the thing, and everybody out there, you get this. Football is a weird, weird sport. There's so many dynamics within the game. To come out and say, like, I was confident the Ravens would win this game, but I couldn't predict they would go 0-3 on turnovers. So was I wrong? 100% I was wrong. But I said I can't want to look it back up. I probably said, I don't remember what I said, but I probably said if these teams played 10 times, I probably had it 6-4. I probably had it 6-4 Ravens. So it was that close anyway. It wasn't like they were going to boat race them every week. There were a number of scenarios where they could, but again, you lose 0-3 on turnover. So yes, so I had 7-3 on that. I do think the Quinyon Mitchell injury, if he's going to be out, that's important because they really are scuffling a corner. That's going to be a problem. But they do have Darius Slay still, and they still have Cooper DeJean. They're bringing on Isaiah Rodgers, who used to be a kick return, but he played some corner in Indy as well. So, I guess they got enough to get by. But that Samuel Cosme injury, that does have me worried because that's a big part of their offensive line, and the Eagles are just going to create havoc. Any final thoughts on that one?
Yeah, that Philly pass rush is going to be a problem this upcoming game. I think that could be the difference in this game. And Dan Quinn's defense, it slowed down the Lions a little bit, but this defense has a lot of holes. And that's where I was going earlier with the emotion.
Yes.
Because I view like if anybody knows like Dan Quinn, he's a player's coach. The locker room loves him. He rallies people. He reminds me a little bit of Dan Campbell. And this defense, like some of those Dallas defenses, when somebody would get hurt, it would be like they're not skipping a beat. I don't think Washington has the defensive talent to slow the Eagles down as much as they would need to win this game.
100%. Now, let's circle back from it. That second game. So I think this is an important point. When the team has a rematch, they can make adjustments. And so we said that first game, the Washington got smoked. It was an 8-point game, but it was really an 18-point game. And again, they made those, that late touchdown, 2-point conversion, the game was over. But when we talk about this game and the rematch when Washington played them, first quarter, Barkley, 2-yard touchdown run, 3.5 minutes into the game. Another 4 minutes later, A.J. Brown catches a touchdown pass from Kenny Pickett. Already we had Hurts out of the game. Barkley then rips a 68-yard run, and then the Commanders started making adjustments to the run. But really, that was it. After the first quarter, that team, mostly with Kenny Pickett, went out to that kind of a lead. And that's with the Commanders having made adjustments. They are not a talented defense. They have some fun players, but they cannot deal with the offensive line of the Eagles, which I thought the Rams could, and I was wrong there. But you think after this appearance, they'll come out a little bit better. Anything there on the Commanders having that rematch, and that's what happened defensively.
Yeah, I thought that in that second game, because if you remember the first one, there were two teams that really slowed down Jaden Daniels, and that was Philly at home and in Pittsburgh. That second one, Jaden Daniels really came out. But again, he had so many opportunities without Jalen Hurts on the field. I know Kenny Pickett accounted for one giveaway, but if we really go look at it, how many 3-and-outs were there? How many more opportunities did Kenny Pickett give Jaden Daniels to really keep the Commanders in this game?
Yeah, there's no doubt. So anyway, again, both sides have a shot here. Again, I'm saying 7-3. Anthony kind of agrees that they play 10 times.
100%.
So, Commanders fans, we're not telling you you've got no chance. You got in our mind, a 30% chance, which is a significant chance for a road game for a team that's the 2 seed against the 6 seed. That sets, those are live odds. And now, one more thing before we move to the other game. You mentioned Jaden Daniels. In the last 2 games, he has been pretty much corralled in the pocket. Buccaneers, they held him to 39 yards. He didn't have many rushing yards against the Lions, but he did try to run. He tried to run, but both teams made it a point to get to him. That's a focus. And so we'll see if that continues on as we go to the next game. But I thought that was important, Anthony.
Yeah. Right now, the opening odds, Eagles are 5.5-point favorites going for next week. The early odds are out.
I'm going to do a teaser. I'm going to do a 2-team teaser. I'm going to take the Eagles, and then they'll be +1, +0.5, which it doesn't matter because you can't tie in a playoff game, but at least they can win by 1, and I'd be fine. And then whatever the Chiefs line is, I'm going to tease them and take an extra 6 points with them. That's going to be my 2-team teaser. Before we get to that game, what would you do with the 5.5? Because I ain't touching 5.5. Not touching it.
I don't know if I would take a side in this game. I would find, the way you're doing it with a teaser, or I would take maybe alt lines and try to build do like a parlay builder that way.
Well, speaking of that, in today's game, that was one thing I had done with the Eagles. I put an alt line down to 2.5 on that game because I was not very confident that they would cover against the Rams. And depending what the line you got, I think the initial line was 6 on that game, and it ended at 6, so it would have been a push, but it moved to 6.5 and 7. So if you went there, you would have lost. So I did an alt line on this one as well, so felt good about that. All right, let's get to the last early preview of the AFC Championship game. We're going to take an early look at the Bills and the Chiefs. All right, Anthony. So we see this game frequently. We've seen it many, many years. Every year in the playoffs, the results the same. Regular season, the Bills usually win. Playoffs, the Chiefs usually win. Is it going to be different this year?
I mean, I don't think so. Number one, it's Kansas City. It's Kansas City in the playoffs. They're battle tested. They've been here and done that. If Buffalo came out today and blew the doors off the Baltimore Ravens and won that game convincingly, then yeah, you could swipe me to say, oh, this is going to be a really close game in Arrowhead. But because they struggled to pick up that win, I look at that spread. Kansas City's -1.5-point favorites opening line for this game. I think it should be closer to 3. I think Kansas City at home in the postseason is a 3-point favorite at home. I don't like this line.
So 1.5, if I go to 6-point teaser, it gets me to +4.5. I'm going to jump on that tonight. So the teaser bet, and I know the odds aren't great, but the teaser bet is the Eagles +0.5 point, and then the Chiefs will be bumped to +4.5. I love those odds. I mean, anything can happen in a game. If the Chiefs lose, I don't see them losing by more than 4. Could it happen? Yeah. Of course it could happen. It's gambling. We gamble and we lose all the time. But on that game, so Steve Spagnuolo, I think really that's the key. And I think that the fact the Bills, in my mind, Shakir's a very nice player, but they really don't have somebody that could put the screws to you at the receiving position. And I think that's perfect for Spagnuolo's defense because there's a lot of things they can do to deal with them. And they don't have to focus too much energy on any one receiver. I think that's an advantage. And last year in the playoffs, they had James Cook's number because, again, when they decided to take him out, first half he did great. And they go, oh, you're going to run Cook? Well, we're just going to make an adjustment. And then he was done. I'm nervous for the Bills. Talk about the Bills in terms of that.
Yeah, Buffalo's offense not having, as you said, these wide receiver threats, these pass catching threats, even the tight end Knox and Kincaid, they're not really killing it. Josh Allen needs to be Superman in these games for them to win. Like Khalil Shakir, once again, your best receiver, your leading receiver. That's all well and good in the regular season, and he'll have these big games. But in the playoffs, when you're going to face top end coverage, and and I think I said on last night's show, Steve, when you talk about the
Spagnuolo
dynasty, He is such the Chiefs dynasty. He's such an
Yep.
underrated piece that he's going to come in. Like you talk about the rematches of the Eagles and Washington. Spags, this is a rematch for him too, at home against Buffalo. So I think that this defense is going to come out ready and try to make this game as one-dimensional as possible.
And then the other side of the ball with the Chiefs, again, the Bills have a very nice defense, and they've been designed to – they were kind of designed to deal with the older versions of the Chiefs. But right now, it's going to be tough because they didn't use Hollywood Brown last week. They didn't have to. And Xavier Worthy has really been weaponized over time and used differently. If they need DeAndre Hopkins to be a factor, they could get him in possession routes. Kelsey has been doing what Kelsey does. Matt Milano is not playing at the level he played pre-injury, so they don't have that tight end eraser. I just think the pass rush for Buffalo is good, but I think Mahomes is going to have plenty of answers here on his home field, and they're not going to run the ball a lot, I don't think, in this one. I think that's not going to be their identity, but I think they're going to match up really well with this version of the Bills defense. Thoughts on the Chiefs offense?
Yeah, if we look at the box score, Chiefs offense, they didn't have to do a lot. They didn't have to throw the ball a lot. If they have to personnel. You mentioned Hollywood and Hopkins. Worthy is coming into his own. We know that Hunt and more so Hunt and Pacheco right now. He's a chain mover if he has to be a receiver out of the backfield. You have obviously Kelsey, but also Noah Gray who can step up. They're very deep when it comes to weapons in Kansas City, which last year they really wasn't. They were not a deep team. You have a lot of depth now, a lot of veteran depth.
If the Chiefs played at home against the Bills in this scenario, conference championship week in Kansas City 10 times, how many do the Chiefs win? How many do the Bills win?
I would once again put it a 7-3. I think 7-3 is fair. I don't have it closer than that. Regular season 6-4 at Arrowhead, then 6-4 if the game was being played in Buffalo in the regular season. But in the playoffs, I think Kansas City wins 7 out of 10 times at home.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same number. I'm 7-3, and I'll publish that when I publish. My notes will be published on Tuesday this week. They'll be at Jim Coventry NFL on the X, give you the breakdowns of all the positions for each of the games, go over any nuanced stuff and things like that. I see Captain Spock is posting out that Washington was plus 3,500 win the Super Bowl at the beginning of the season. I hope you put a couple coins on that because you got a live fighter right now. Not sure if that'll come through, but those are nice odds. But I know there was one year I took the Rams, and the Rams were getting there, and I chickened out and took the cash out, which was a real nice payout, and they ended up winning. I should have just stuck with it, but I didn't. Anthony, any final words?
No, really looking forward to championship weekend, championship Sunday, especially this Chiefs Buffalo game. I think this is going to be another one where the whole world wants the Bills to be the Cinderella team and knock off Patrick Mahomes, but until I see it, I don't believe it.
A few programming notes. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I think we're going to be staring at a three-peat for Kansas City when it's all said.
My goodness. A few programming notes. So, in terms of this specific show, we will be back right after that Chiefs-Bills game next Sunday night, just like we are here, and we'll go through both of those games. We'll do a quick look ahead at the Super Bowl. If you want a deep dive preview on both of Sunday's games, tune into this channel Wednesday earlier than usual. It's 10 a.m. Eastern. Myself and Joe Bartle will do that one, but obviously you can catch that anytime on the channel after it's over. Sirius XM, Saturday, 2 to 4 Eastern, channel 87. Sunday, we'll take you right up to kickoff to right up to kickoff, the hour before kickoff on Sunday. I can never get the East. I'm in Central Time Zone, so I always screw that up. So I think it'll be 2 to 3. Anyway, forget it. Time zones I'm terrible with. Anyway. Keep up with RotoWire on the socials. Free RotoWire trial, no credit card needed. Even if you're into baseball, we got the best baseball coverage on the planet. RotoWire.com/Jim. Check us out. No credit card. If you like us, join the team. If not, just glad you looked. All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the games. We will be with you throughout next week. We're getting closer to the Super Bowl, but enjoy what we have left.